Well, it is time. Our boy Chasm is back, ladies and gentlemen. He's already actually been back twice. The first time was actually during 2023's Dark X-Men number 4. The Dark X-Men were having some sort of interaction at Madeline Pryor's embassy in New York, and Ben Reilly managed to escape. I purchased the comic because I believe Ben Reilly was going to be doing some cool stuff. Unfortunately, I was sadly disappointed. Fear not, ladies and gentlemen, for $7.99, if you bought 2024's Web of Spider-Man number 1, you get a retelling of Ben Reilly's escape from Madeline Pryor's embassy prison. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be covering and reviewing The Amazing Spider-Man number 47. If you're enjoying this video at any time, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and without further ado, let's jump right into this comic. Our comic begins with a butcher-looking villain wearing a mask is torturing this man. This man is a very good friend of Luke Cage, who is currently the mayor. The mayor, Luke Cage, is in contact with Madeline Pryor because she has her embassy in New York. The butcher villain is threatening to cut off this gentleman's fingers and his toes if he doesn't contact Luke Cage, in the hopes of just releasing Ben Reilly, who, as we've mentioned before, he's imprisoned in Madeline Pryor's embassy. Or at least, that's what this butcher character believes. Before anything gets really violent, Chasm shows up and prevents any harm happening to this gentleman that's being tortured. This is when we get revealed that the butcher villain is actually Hallows Eve, Chasm's girlfriend. To give some more context, Hallows Eve is a villain that, like I said, is Chasm's girlfriend. During the Dark Web event, Madeline Pryor gave special powers to Chasm's girlfriend. Previously, she was just a regular human being, but she gave her powers. And these powers happen to be just the ability to wear different masks and transform into whatever that mask entails. So if she puts on like a werewolf mask, she'll turn into a werewolf. In this case, she put on like a Jason mask, and of course, she turned into like a butchery style villain. At first you question with this comic, like, why is she torturing this man just to get to Luke Cage, to get to Madeline Pryor, to get to Ben Reilly? Why is she doing that? Can't she just like attack the embassy herself and free Ben Reilly? Well, that's actually something that happened in The Amazing Spider-Man annual number 1 for 2023. It's definitely not something y'all are missing out on. The comic was written horribly. It basically just establishes that Hallows Eve does attempt to break out Ben Reilly out of the embassy, but the point is, she definitely has attempted to break him out, and this is just what I'm assuming is another scenario of her just trying to, I don't know, get close to Luke Cage by getting close to a homie that knows Luke Cage? I don't know. That's just her way of thinking. And then the comic follows it up with having 6 pages of just regular Peter life. It's actually just him going out on a date again. To be quite honest, whenever they put a scenario up like that, I dread reading it. It has never been fun. There's never been a good interaction where Peter genuinely had fun. Like I said, it's a dread. In this case, it surprisingly goes very well. They do talk about Peter's incompetence with women, but like I said, it actually goes very well. What happens is Aunt Anna ends up setting up Peter and the doctor, her nurse from the Ravencroft Institute. Now, going into the date, Peter was completely unaware that it was actually a date, so he was actually calling Mary Jane to see what was up. So as Peter walks up to Shay, both Peter and MJ are just on the phone wondering like why MJ isn't even there, like it's her aunt. And as Peter walks up to Shay, it gets revealed that it's just a date that Aunt Anna set up. Aunt Anna made it seem like it was important to the release of her from the Institute, but it was actually just a way to set up Peter with a date. And it gets established that the nurse, even though Aunt Anna went on and came up with this elaborate lie, she already knew right off the bat that she was getting set up for this date. And she believed that Peter was actually smart enough to understand that as well, because she makes a comment when Peter walks up, "Oh, you're on the phone with your ex?" That's not a good first impression. And that's actually the moment where I instantly felt dread. I was like, again? We're doing this again? But no, like I said, the date actually went very well, and you get to see very close resemblance to what Peter does as Spider-Man, the nurse does with, these villains and psychos at the Institute. Unfortunately, Peter has to cut it short. I mean, not short enough, because it was like 6 pages of this stuff. Like I said, at first I dreaded reading into it, but it was alright. just 6 pages, bro. Peter gets a text from Betty Brant saying that she needs Spider-Man's help and sends him the address. The next sequence in the comic is actually really fun. Spider-Man shows up to the scene helping Betty Brant, and the man takes control. The comic had sort of a 80s feel when it came to Spider-Man showing up and just taking control, especially when it came to the fact that he was showing up to help a friend in need. The action sequence is surprisingly very fast, but everything makes sense and it's fun to go through. My only gripe would be the fact that they only resorted to having 2 pages of action, whereas we had to resort to 6 pages of Peter going out on a date. Nevertheless, the action was surprisingly very cool, and this actually felt like Spider-Man in action. So Betty Brant is investigating this abandoned building where she has found the object that ended up turning Ned Leeds into the Hobgoblin back in issue like 13 or 14, something like that. It just so happened to be a Kingsley property. Kingsley is just another Hobgoblin as well. And he didn't like the fact that Betty Brant was investigating, his property. So he sent these goons out to go silence Betty Brant. And that's when, Spider-Man received the text from her and had to go save her. Everything connects very well in this comic. Now, before I continue with talking about the device that Betty Brant actually found that turned Ned Leeds into the Hobgoblin, there's another moment where they continue talking about the living brain, which they have just hinted at in previous issues. It seemed that the writer took some security course because there's just a lot of terminology in this panel, or this page actually. We talking about 2-factor authentication this, and spamming email servers that. I know we're talking about the living brain, so this is all fine and well. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we're probably going to hear anything about this because I don't think they're going to be telling the story in the ASM comics. It looks like just there's an asterisk on the page where they try to hype you up for another different Spider adventure. Might be another tie-in, who knows. Shame. I was actually getting genuinely curious about the living brain. Oh well, we got a pretty cool story in issue 6, so there's that. Now getting back to Spider-Man and Betty Brant looking for this machine that she found. Upon seeing it face to face, they get confronted by Chasm and Hallows Eve. Despite Spider-Man and Chasm's interactions being written like caca poo-poo in the past, this time it's actually pretty fun, and like I said, Spider-Man gets written like Spider-Man. He stands up for his friend, Betty Brant, who's getting made fun of. Comic ends by having the Queen Goblin make an appearance, and it seems that she's teaming up with Chasm and Hallows Eve in this scenario. Not to be confused with the Goblin Queen, who is a completely different character. That's Madeline Pryor. The Goblin Queen is Madeline Pryor, and the Queen Goblin is Dr. Kafka, a doctor that worked at the Ravencroft Institute. Last we checked on the Queen Goblin, she was hooking up with Kraven during the Kraven story arc back in issues 32 through 35. Back then, her goal was to release the sins of the Goblin from her so that she can finally be free, and that's how we ended up with Spider-Man getting the Goblin persona within him and wearing the black suit to just cause chaos in that story arc. I don't quite remember if the story arc ended with her actually going back to being normal or being crazy. She was still definitely wearing the Queen Goblin outfit where, she's just being a villain, but her dialogue seemed very normal. I just don't know. I guess we're gonna find out what she wants in this story arc. And that is all for the comic, ladies and gentlemen. I genuinely enjoyed this issue. It was actually pretty fun. My only gripe was definitely the fact that we got like 6 pages of just Peter going out on a date compared to 2 pages of him, in action. As I've mentioned in my issue 46 review, it seems that now we're definitely starting with completely brand new storylines, and these characters that appeared in the past, who knows what they're going to be doing with them. All I can hope for is the fact that they do Chasm justice, because he just has been a character that exists. Nothing to properly well define him. He just hates Spider-Man because he wants his memories back or something. If I can recall, the previous ASM volume seemed to have Ben Reilly just normal and like acting as a hero until he fell into like a pit of just goo or whatever actually turned him into Chasm. From that point onward, the boy has just existed without really having his memories, I guess. He's still very foggy, but as I've stated, nothing to well define the character. And I leave you with that, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed this video at any point, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.